To understand the relationship between Latin America and black baseball, we have to go all the way back to the very beginning. In 1899, when the All Cubans, the first Latin team to tour America, played a series of games against the Cuban Exxon, a team that was an offshoot of the Cuban Giants, which was the first black professional baseball team in America.
Abel Linares, who founded the All Cubans with Tensy Molina,
challenged the Ex-Giants for, quote, posing as representatives of Cuba. This is because while the Cuban Ex-Giants, like the team they came from, had the word Cuban in their name, they didn't actually have any Cuban players on their team, though some of their players had played in Cuba before. It suggested that the name came from the fact that because a lot of the players were light-skinned, they could pass as Cuban and potentially get better treatment than if they were seen as being black. This is something that Adrian Burgos Jr., author of the book Cuban Star, attested to during an interview when discussing the ways in which Latinos integrated Major League Baseball. The All Cubans and the Ex-Giants played a 2-game series in August of 1899. And this is significant because it's possibly the very first time that a Latin baseball team played against an African American baseball team. And even though the Cuban Ex-Giants swept this series, the matchup proved to open up a new business opportunity that would help foster a new relationship between black players and Latino players that would go on to change the MLB. A year after this matchup, the Cuban Ex-Giants began to tour Cuba and played against local teams, with this being the first time a black team had toured the country. And their visit may have had a major effect, because in that same year, the Cuban Baseball League dropped its color barrier, and this was long before the MLB ever did. And they even went a step further, adding a black team, the San Francisco Baseball Club, to their league. Some teams, like the Almendares, signed black players to their team. Players like Sam Jethro and future Hall of Famer Monty Irvin. They would even sign black Cuban players like Jose Menendez and Angel Skull. The All Cubans also began to change. When they first started out, the team was full of Criollos and Mestizos. But by 1902, they had signed Afro-Cubans to their team and began playing matches against other Negro League teams like the Philadelphia Giants. All is possible because of 2 games. And if you want to learn more about some of these teams, you check out this playlist here. As time went on, more Cubans joined the Negro League. And by the early 1900s, the Negro League had a team that was full of Cuban baseball players called the Cuban Stars. As a matter of fact, there were multiple teams that had the name Cuban Stars. First, there was the Cuban Stars West, started by Abel Linares and Tensy Molina. And then there were the Cuban Stars East, which was started by Alex Pompez. And then there was another team called the Cuban Stars. This one was started by Sid Pollock, who was also the owner of the Indianapolis Clowns. I go into more detail about those teams in this video right here. By the 1930s, Alex Pompez created what would be the final Negro League team to have Cuban in their name, the New York Cubans. The interesting thing about this team is that they didn't just have Cubans on the team. They also had Mexicans and Dominican players. And if you want to learn more about the New York Cubans, I go into more detail about them in this video over here. The country of Cuba has had a complex relationship with the African American community and racism for a long time. Some of these complexities can be seen in the fact that while Cuba has welcomed black activists like Nelson Mandela, it's also seemingly ignored the plight of its Afro-Cuban citizens, partially as a way of preserving its quote-unquote race-blind image. The integration of baseball is just one example of that complex and yet transactional relationship, with both communities benefiting from one another through competition and collaboration. Cuban players got more opportunities to play in America, and black players got a chance to play integrated baseball at a time when their own country wouldn't allow them to. This relationship also helped play a pivotal role in reshaping the game of baseball. By the early 1900s, white Cubans had already begun to integrate the major leagues, while black Cubans and other Afro-Latinos wouldn't be represented in the MLB until almost 50 years later. In 1949, Nini Minoso, who helped the New York Cubans win their first and only Negro League World Series title, became the first black Cuban and the first Afro-Latino to play in the MLB when he signed with the Cleveland Indians. Players like Minoso are a product of the complementary relationship between the Negro League. Cuba wasn't the only Latino country to have this kind of relationship with the Negro Leagues either. Just west of Cuba, the nation of Mexico's relationship with black baseball began as far back as the late 1930s, with Satchel Paige being recognized as one of the first Negro League players to play in the country due to a change in policy with the Mexican League that allowed teams to sign up to 4 foreign players. Satchel played with the Guerrero club in Mexico City, and Page wasn't the only Negro League player to make that trip to Mexico. Over the years, several players would come. Players like Willie Wells, who Mexican fans nicknamed El Diablo because of his extreme athleticism and intensity with how he played the game. One man who is said to have played a significant role in developing this relationship is a businessman and baseball executive named Jorge Pascal, who helped organize matches between white players and Negro League players to be played in Mexico. And this would mark one of the earliest occasions of black and white players going up against each other prior to the integration of baseball, and would occur in 1946, just a year before Jackie Robinson's Brooklyn Dodgers debut. Playing in Mexico provided both a social advantage due to being able to play integrated baseball and a financial one as well. One of the ways that Pascal was able to draw so many Negro League players was due to him offering them a better salary than what they can get in America. Both the MLB and some of the Negro Leagues began to retaliate against Jorge and the players that took him up on his offer. In 1946, the MLB issued a rule that prevented players who went to Mexico from returning to the MLB. On the Negro League side, Gus Greenlee, owner of the Pittsburgh Crawfords, tried to ban Satchel Paige from the Negro Leagues. Greenlee and Page already had a strained relationship due to contractual disputes. African American players would continue to play in Mexico for the winter seasons, with teams like the Azules de Veracruz, which had players like Josh Gibson, Ray Dandridge, and Cool Papa Bell. The team was based in the Mexican state of Veracruz, where a significant number of African slaves were transported to as part of the transatlantic slave trade. This team was also managed by a player named Martin Dihigo, a man who achieved the impressive feat of being in the Hall of Fame in 5 different countries, including Mexico. And it was in Mexico that the Cuban-born player, with ties to the Negro Leagues, put up some impressive stats, with a .387 batting average. He is also credited with pitching the first no-hitter in Mexican League history. Papa Bell also had an amazing legacy in Mexico. During his time playing for Veracruz, he led all players in batting averages, home runs, and RBIs, which is known in the baseball world as a triple crown. Many Negro League players were still playing in Mexico as late as the 1960s, because although the MLB was integrated, black players still found more respect playing overseas than they did in the States. And this fact is interesting, because while black players from America received great treatment, Mexico has had a deep and documented issue with racism in their own country. To this day, darker-skinned Mexicans get treated worse than Mexicans who are more fair-skinned. With this in mind, it's almost shocking to see how well black Americans are treated in Mexico as compared to the country that they were born in. These complexities don't only exist in Mexico either, and attitudes like this can be seen across various countries in the Latino community. It should, however, be noted that, at least in the beginning of the 20th century, Mexico was seen as a safe haven for racial discrimination, and it remained as such until at least 1925, when the Mexican government began limited immigration, sometimes based on race, a practice that they would continue until 1939, the same year that Satchel Paige began playing in Mexico. But, even with these controversies in place, Mexico still offered a safe haven for black players to play and help further the agenda to integrate baseball.